Well, good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are on this beautiful blue orb this Monday. We are going live, Sahana and I, with another awesome guest for our community campfire exploration. So how are you, Sahana? How's things in your world?
I'm good. The world is, of course, falling apart, trying desperately hold itself together, but I'm personally good. I don't know if that sounds almost sacrilegious in today's world, but yeah. And I'm
Good.
excited for our conversation today for the campfire. Mhm.
Beautiful. Well, look, it's sacrilegious to be happy in a collapsing world, right?
Yep.
I'm sure we're going to talk about that as today's topics around belonging in possible futures, emergent futures. So would you mind setting us up today before we bring the wonderful Eleanor Snare into the conversation with us?
Thank you, Gary. So, belonging is one of my favorite, very close to my heart theme. Belonging in this world, belonging on this planet, belonging to self, and what does it really mean to belong? So, as the world we knew it is crumbling around us, accompanied, of course, by fires, furies, fractured social orders, and fragmented humans, we thought it would be relevant and worthwhile to hold a dialogue around belonging. Belonging in a future very, very different from the past, belonging wholly and fully to ourselves so that we can take our rightful place in an emergent and possible futures. I'm using the plural very, very deliberately, so please note. Who we are and who are we becoming have never, never been so important. This becoming will form the foundation of a very different civilizational narrative. Actually, narratives, plural, which are already on their way. Their hegemony defined, multi threaded, pluriversal, arising from every nook and cranny of this planet, from the unheard, unseen, unknown, unacknowledged voices. If we know how to read the signs of an emerging future, and many possible futures are coming together, and how we ourselves belong to that future depends on each and every one of us being who we are, belonging to ourselves, finding our hidden wholeness. Thank you. Thank you, Gary. And thank you, everyone. Welcome to our campfire.
Beautiful. And what a moment to bring in the wonderful Eleanor Snare. How are you, our friend?
I'm very well. I really appreciated that introduction, Shahana, and that
Thank you, Eleanor.
belonging to ourselves is it's such an important thread of what my personal journey has been and what I'm keen to offer more fully in a professional capacity. That belonging to ourselves is just really really resonates.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been my personal journey too. Not been, it's still been.
Yeah.
It's still, I'm on the journey. So thank you.
So as we go exploring today, Ellie, so as always, we're very popcorn. We'll flow where we need to flow, but please do let people know, anybody that might be watching us live or watches this back, a little bit more about this version of Ellie, where you're at, what's going on.
So yes, so what's going on? Oh, just a small question then. So this, where I'm turning up at the moment as myself, is really leaning into being a multidisciplinary practitioner, in that I'm bringing in modalities that I've trained in and experienced before around coaching, writing, teaching, educating, with a very specific kind of 3 components, which I'm framing as embodiment, empowerment, and ecology. And my real fascination and what I'm moving towards is this embodied and lived and kind of in the body experience of growth and development, recognizing that practice is not an individual practice, it is a communal practice that we can connect to each other and connect to the planet. So a lot of my work at the moment, as I'm moving forward into that space, is sharing those practices with other people and bringing in kind of all the past stuff where I've been working just with my head and my cognitive functions, and bringing that into how can I apply that to make the most of the embodiment work that I'm developing and learning how to do. So I would describe myself as a multidisciplinary practitioner, really focusing on, I describe my process as it's about helping people come home to themselves, to what they want to do in the world, to their place in the world. And as Sahana, as you said, it is a lifelong journey. For me, my perception of it in my role is that it's helping people start and helping people move on with that coming home, that momentum to actually take the first step. But that's how I describe it, and that's why belonging is and belonging to the self is such a powerful thread of it, because that is to me what coming home is being okay with this, whatever this is and wherever we are in that moment. I hope that articulates some of it. I'm very conscious that I see it as very difficult to kind of summarize it neatly, what one does. I can do it in the marketing spiel, but I don't want to do that right now. So I can sell it to you, do you know what I mean, in the marketing spiel, but that's not what I'm here today to do. It's about being human and the reality of complexity and kind of facets of the self. But I hope that was, at least, if not the words, then the energy was articulate enough.
It's so powerful. Like, we're both, I can see, Sahana, we're both in that, just like, you've just done you've done the show, right? It's finished.
It's over. It's summed up.
The thing is, the reason for that, before like you chip in, like the thing that really struck me really powerfully is you did express that, though, Ellie, is I had the old version of me, the current version of me, and the future version of me in that moment, all wrestling. The old version being like, tell me bloody it is what you do, in like succinctly, quickly, right now, because like I'm busy, let me get on to the next thing. Then there's me right now that's like, I love just how you're expressing, you're embodying. There's future me going like, whoa, this is like just the start of it. Like, and all of that,
yeah,
like, all of that was happening at the same time, right? And that's that complexity piece you're speaking about. Like, and I love how you, and I just want to point this out for people that might be watching, you actively held complexity. You actively did not allow yourself to diminish yourself.
Yep.
That I just wanted to point that out for anyone that might be going like, why are you getting so excited, Gary? That's why. Anyway.
And that's the diminishing of the self, you know, coming from a professional background which has really focused on marketing. It teaches you so many great skills around articulation and persuasion. But one of the things you learn is that it has to be simple, because we're so busy that we need like one thing to do. But it's not, while that's effective commercially, it's not a reflection of our actual who we are. And I definitely have had to unlearn the diminishing, both as a professional kind of mechanism, but also as a personal thing, because conditioned, if you're a complex, or you have complex interests, or you have you know, a Venn diagram of purpose which doesn't look like what other people think it should, because you're not just a job title. I've had to really unlearn to diminish myself, because it's just, sometimes it's just easier, you know, it's easier to just go, yeah, I'm this one word, but because then there's no questions and there's no follow-up. So I really appreciate, Gary, you like highlighting that, and because it's, you know, it's like a little mirror me and I'm going, oh yeah, I did do that. Yeah, great, good.
Yeah. I so resonate with that. Thank you, Ellie. Thank you for highlighting that. Thank you for bringing it out. And I'm thinking of my professional journey, which has been in, multinational corporations across the globe. Not in the market, not in marketing, but in learning and development and organization design and development. But again, similar experiences of being a job title, of having to fulfill or fit into a box that's made for that job title, but that's not made for an individual. So you basically have extra parts which don't fit into the box. And then you have to chop those parts off or hide those parts or just simplify those parts or not mention those parts. And because it's just simpler, like you said. And then people don't ask questions. You're VP of L&D, great. VP of L&D does whatever the VP of L&D does. But you're much more than that VP of L&D. You are XYZ and you are ABC and you are not certain things and that another VP of L&D would be, but it's not explained, it's not captured. So I've gone through a large part of my corporate career trying to fit in while feeling like a misfit and trying to chop off my extra bits and pieces and pretend to be, well, I fit in, when internally I didn't. So that was like leading parallel lives. And I'm also a coach and a facilitator and all of those things. So when I started reflecting, and what came up when you mentioned belonging in our thread prior to our uh, dialogue today, to me it seemed so critical to bring that out, not in an organizational space, in the space of our lives, professional, personal, and private. What does belonging mean? Do we feel a sense of deep belonging in an organization, in ourselves, with the people we are closest to? If we do, that's when, like you said, it is about coming home. And that's when I think we do our best, give our best, and can be who we are. Our emerging selves are then nurtured because we learn to belong to ourselves. And I keep thinking that, if organizations could become spaces or platforms where people felt a sense of belonging, deep belonging, not just being part of a team or not just being, uh, a managing director of such and such or whatever, but just a deep sense of belonging, then what kind of an organization would that be? How would that organization impact this world, this planet, this blue orb, like Gary says? And how would we show up and co-create the futures that we are talking about today, that here, in belonging in emerging futures? What would be those futures we co-create together from a deep-rooted sense of belonging, rather than feeling so fragmented and fractured and leaving bits and pieces of ourselves every which way?
That you mentioning there about the cutting off parts of yourself, I sense there's a sort of fear or maybe even a reality in communities of any kind where we have rules, that we've agreed upon or we've assumed that we've all agreed on, where we've gone, if you do this, you're going to get sort of ejected. And essentially we're saying that part of you, that if that is, I'm thinking, in an extreme example, it would be something like, don't murder anyone.
Yeah.
Basic one that I think we could all sort of basically get on board with. We say, don't do that. If you do that, these are the consequences. You'll be ejected from the belonging, the sense of belonging in the community. But what I recognize, I think, is that we just don't actually sit down and talk about what those things are very often, and we don't consciously construct it because we've just assumed, we've just agreed, and we've assumed, or there's structures in place, for example, like laws, which have already said, no, this is the way it is. Laws change. and society and social structures and communities grow. But when we take that, say a nation or globally, or something like the UN or something, when we take that down to say a family or a relationship, that's almost, because there's fewer people involved, I think sometimes that's when we have fewer conversations about what have we actually agreed on. That, sometimes just as we feel that sense of belonging, we have to feel that sense of belonging, we have to be okay with the idea that one day we might not feel like we belong with that group. If you really want to feel that belonging in your family, I'm really interested in things like systems coaching, and they talk about the guilt of leaving the system. If you want to be in that space and recognize that belonging, you have to also recognize that one day that might not be there because of, could be anything.
Yeah.
But the smaller we get into these communities, these units of community, whether that's relationship, family, organizations, I think we don't stop and kind of agree on what belonging feels like, or what does it mean to belong, as you're saying. And for me, there's so much work around that. And this is directly related to the post I put on LinkedIn about being ethically non-monogamous, which is, I did it and people were like, but the reason I talked about it, one, because it's a big part of who I am and I don't want to chop any bits off, but also because it's a direct correlation between that, the way I operate in my intimate relationships is how I operate in professional relationships, in that we determine it together. We agree together on what we're going to do and what we're sharing and what the rules and the situation is, so that we can feel that sense of security and belonging. We don't have to question that. We can just move on with the actual fun bit. But I wonder to what extent that if we're going to have this sense of belonging, or we're keen to have this sense of belonging in that creation of emergent futures, I think there needs to be so much more conversation about, when we say this, what do we actually mean? And like, am I okay leaving if I don't agree? Do I belong to myself enough that I can leave this unit, knowing there will be other units to which I can belong? And I think that's really hard. You're going from we don't talk about that sort of thing on a family level, perhaps, in a relationship, to really articulating everything about, here's what I need to feel nourished, here's what I need to feel loved, here's what I need to feel appreciated, here's what I can give to you. And those are hugely powerful, but really kind of excavating conversations for people. Yeah, that's where that took me.
Back of my neck again, Sahana. Keeps happening with these conversations. keeps on happening. Ellie, honestly, there's something about as well for me in how you just expressed that, right? Which is this grounded, integrated assuredness, right? In that, how can I be the best version of Ellie in the world, in all of the whole of me, if I can't do that in every part of my life? And that is countercultural to the cult of busy, right? Like, where do most people not belong? To themselves, first of all, and then in most workplaces, because there isn't the time to ask the questions or to get curious around the stuff you're pointing us towards, right? And I think there's something really I can feel in my body as we explore today, like there is that real that pull and that tension, because people watching this or listening to it, even if they're curious, might be like, how do I even start? So what would you say, Ellie, if someone was like going like, oh, this is really like, I want some of that. I want some of that Ellie integration. Like, where the heck do I even start? Because I'm lost in this matrix of absolute OV business and wildness. I'm just wondering what you might respond to that.
So I really believe that everyone knows the answers for themselves. They already know what they need to do. What they lack is the courage or tenacity or maybe the time or something. But they know. Someone watching this would be like, I know what that is. I know what I'm not talking about. I know what I'm not sharing. And actually just acknowledging that I know what it is. And for whatever reason, I am choosing to not open up and show this part of myself. And, thinking about, say, trauma-informed practice, it's allowing yourself to be okay with that, because just like, for example, if you've experienced trauma, one of the things that can happen is a lot of guilt, like, well, why didn't I do anything? It was my fault. Why didn't I do anything? And recognizing, no, you have been protecting yourself for a reason. If you have not wanted to talk about or share with your colleagues about some sort of characteristic or part of your life that you were worried they were going to eject you for, that's okay, because you're coming from a place of, I want to keep myself safe. It's acknowledging that, and this is really difficult, that you will be safe with you. And I think, like you said, Gary, I think most people, they feel they don't belong with themselves, because they're trying to, as Sahana said, cut off these parts of themselves rather than allow them into their life, and allow the parts of ourselves that we feel guilty about or worried about or shame about. I'm a sexual trauma survivor, emotional neglect survivor. And to go from that place to now practicing embodiment and facilitating that for others, the biggest thing, one of the biggest things that I had to reintegrate and belong to myself was that I felt so much shame of just having a body, because my body was dangerous. My body caused me pain. My body got this person to do, whatever got this person to do this for me. People look at my body like, just actually allowing that, recognizing I felt ashamed to have a body. But without recognizing that feeling, you can't then do anything about it. And just really sitting in and allowing yourself to be like, do you know what? This is something that I feel maybe simultaneously shame and joy about. Because maybe sometimes sometimes it's like, we love this thing about ourselves so much, and it's such a huge part of who we are, and yet we've been told our whole lives that it's terrible. And so we're constantly wrestling with this, like you said, those different versions of the self, or the socialized self. And when someone's starting on this journey, it's just, the first thing is like, Alcoholics Anonymous, you stand up and you say, hello, I'm so-and-so and I'm an alcoholic. You stand up and say, hello, I'm so-and-so and I'm ashamed of this core part of me. Or I'm frightened of this part of me. Or I'm sort of desperately unhappy about this part of me. Acknowledging that for yourself, it has to be the first step. Because I really think that, Sahana, when you're saying about organizations, for me, it's like so much about, and this is, it's about unconditional love. Unconditional love for all parts of who you are. And so many of us did not get unconditional love as children. Like extraordinary numbers of us. So we're having to teach ourselves to love all parts of ourselves unconditionally, and to come from that. And then that's really, for me, an organization where you have that unconditional love. You can have things where, like that behavior is not acceptable, or this is danger. Unconditional love doesn't mean it's kind of like get away with anything. It means that you fully accept that person as they are in that moment, and you love them. Because it's when you push them away, or you push part of yourself away, that's when it becomes really hard to actually move forward and become whatever you want to do. Come home to yourself. You've got to just love it. I think about this quite a lot with like how people treat children, or how we would treat children. If a kid does something naughty, you might say that was unacceptable, but you'll always hug them. You'll always like make sure they're okay. You'll always kind of love them. But then we just don't do that for ourselves. And it's that for me is a big thing, is acknowledging what is it that I just want to push away from myself, and how can I love that and bring that back in? Because that is going to be the healing. That's going to be where it takes you into some amazing place. It has for me. I was thinking about this, the other day, because a lot of people are really afraid to be themselves, right? And I was thinking, I've done a few posts on LinkedIn where I've just been like, this is it, this is the whole kit and caboodle, this is me. And it's from those instances where they've just been almost kind of, I don't want to say thoughtless, but almost just kind of like, this is it. This is what we're working with today. Those have been the posts and things that have led to me having opportunities, to new connections. Some, an organization approached me to write a book literally because of I was just talking about being what this experience was like. And I think we really forget that if we can belong to ourselves and really love that and really express that, that will be success. That is a success. It can be lucrative. It can, whatever you want it to be, it can be it. But it's almost like you've got to just let yourself, just got to let go and be like, this is it. This is me. This is who I am. This is it. And that, I know that if people hear that, so many people are just going to be terrified to say, this is me. This is it. This is what you get. It's just, I know a few years ago, I would have been just completely frazzled and terrified by that idea. And I don't know if you both have had that or experienced that still, or.
That's what I meant, when I was talking about at the outset that belonging to ourselves wholly and fully, because it is, I think that is the journey, the most crucial journey, which then allows you to hold space for others to belong to themselves. And what happens is, like you said, it's okay if I want to keep something about me private, and it's okay if others want to keep something about them private. Belonging doesn't mean spilling everything out, and it's not about license to kill, and it's not about license to do whatever you want that might harm others. I think belonging wholly, like you've so beautifully said, is loving every part of ourselves. And even if I don't love every part of myself, it's still me, and I can still embrace it and say, hey, you know what, this bit about me is not something I like, but it's still me. And that may not feel acceptable to me, but I still love you no matter what you're like. And I think that becomes, because I've tried this experiment as a coach. I've tried asking people to tell me in 5 seconds, what is it that you most love about yourself? And no one can tell me offhand. They sit, they think, they ponder, they reflect, then they choose. It's not an instantaneous, spontaneous answer. It's almost like people have to think over what they love most deeply about themselves. So what that showed me as a coach, and for myself also, it equally applies, that I'm constantly judging myself. So if I'm constantly in this space of judgment about myself, I'm obviously constantly judging others, because that's my default operating system. And once we get into that, that default OS, it becomes this kind of a foundation or platform from which we take off and do everything. And that's why, I guess, like you said, whether it's an organization or a community or whatever the form that institution might take, we end up after a while maybe losing that sense of belonging, because we are grasping at something exterior to us rather than within. And the exterior will keep shifting. It is temporary, it's transient. I mean, that's the whole fundamental of life. It's going to keep shifting and changing, and a boss will go, a new boss will come, the manager will go, the CEO will leave, someone will expire, the organization will lose 5 projects. But because it's all these externals that ground us, once those externals are shifted or the goalpost shifts, that grounding goes, and then again you feel the sense of panic. And so, to get back to, the emerging futures, to me seems like a series of shifting goalposts. They are shifting, the narratives are shifting. So unless we belong to ourselves so deeply now, we are just going to be washed away in those, maelstrom of narratives, in those tides of new narratives that are arising from everywhere. So I guess I just wanted to riff off what you were saying and say belonging to ourselves has never been so important. But now I would say none of us really know how to begin that journey, how to not even embark, but then you embark, but how do you stay on it? Where do you go? What is the tenacity needed? What are the pitfalls that you watch out for? How do you traverse that unknown path? It's not even a map, it's not even a compass, it's like an unknown path. And each step might show up as you take one, then the next might show up, but you don't know. It's pretty fuzzy and hazy out there. You might need a fog light or whatever. But, so that's.
It's so, you were saying that when about, asking people, what do you love most about yourself? And people don't answer instinctively. It's almost, as you were saying, they're kind of judging it. It's almost like the question they're actually thinking of is, what am I allowed to say that I love about myself? What is acceptable to say that I could love about myself? And we do a very poor job, not all cultures, but lots of cultures do a very poor job at allowing people pride. And I've definitely come up against that in workplaces before, where I've been like, look, I'm good at this, clearly, like objectively, and just people don't like it. They don't want to hear it. And it's not because there's anything inaccurate, it's that it is a mirror to their own lack of pride in their skills. And that's, again, but if we worked on belonging to ourselves, then we wouldn't feel the need to do that, and then everyone would chill out a bit. But it's almost because, as you say, Sahana, I totally agree. There's no there's no one route. There's no eat this food, do this thing, read this book, and you will find yourself. Like, it's nonsense. For me, when you were talking about it, I felt myself get excited, because that's what I am absolutely fascinated by. I love it. Like, I love the process of, someone described it as the other day, they were like, you're really good at taking yourself on. Like, you face up to it. Just, do you know what I mean? Like, you're just going to do it. You're just going to, like, it doesn't end. And I find that so thrilling and exciting to do that for myself. And I believe that when people start to take those first steps, and they see the impact, and then they develop the momentum, and then they have the discipline, I see that anyone can generate that kind of excitement and that thrill of, wow, that this journey is about me. Like, this is my journey to come home and to be me. And the person at the start of it and at the end of it is me. But when you see, by doing that, as you said, Sahana, like the impact it has and the giving you can do for others and the service you can be of, it's completely counterintuitive to everything we've been taught. Like it's selfish and but it's just, when you go, do you know what? I'm going to be me as hard as I possibly can. The joy that brings to other people is far outweighs any negative impact. And that's, that's coming from a position of privilege. I'm not in a particular culture where I know, that I'm going to be physically harmed, for example, for being who I am. And at the same time, as you said, you don't have to share everything, but it's allowing that to belong to yourself. But I find like that idea of that path is just so like, I can fit in my body. I'm like, whoa, so exciting.
I just love Ellie. Honestly, the way you just you get me excited. I'm just like, oh my god, I'm excited. Ellie's excited, but this is so I'm gonna try and bring as we go into our like sort of last 5-10 minutes. First, we do want you to share, Ellie, about do it now actually, if you don't mind, your amazing 5-day thing that started today, just in case anyone's watching or listening back that might be interested.
So today, from the 10th to the 14th of October, so for the next 5 days, I am hosting a virtual retreat, which is all about rebalancing and reconnecting to your body and to the planet. So every day, participants in the retreat will receive an email that's got a movement or visualization practice in. That idea is that you can do it in your own time because it's pre-recorded. So it has started today. The first one went out, and it's really lovely exercise called Outside In, where you lots of bringing awareness and visualization, and then starting to think about what do my bones feel like, and all this like really exciting kind of in-depth understanding of the body. So it has started, but what I have done is I've added a bonus live session, and anyone can sign up to that one. That's going to be on Friday 14th at 5 p.m. UK time. So I'll be able to share the link with you to put somewhere. But that's going to be really great. I did a workshop last week, and it was the review, the feedback was just something that someone said, which I thought really touched me, was someone said, I've started to cry because I've taken the time to be kind to myself. And it was just, really gets you. So the session on Friday is going to be a combination of reviewing the retreat, maybe bringing in some of the practices and experimenting with some movement, just to have a really nice closing situation. But if you're not signed up to the retreat, that's totally cool. You can still come along to the live session and experience kind of a taster of what is it like to move and reflect with these sorts of themes in mind that I've been talking about, and with this, I guess, the kind of complex style of facilitation. And I'm going to be running more in the future because they're just absolutely smashing. So if people sign up to my mailing list as well, you'll be able to find out about that.
Super cool. The other thing,
you've signed up, Gary, haven't you, for the retreat?
I've received the first email. I need to have a look at. So yes, it's working. You'll be glad to know. The emails have gone out. The other thing I'm interested, like, it's been such a beautiful exploration as always when we get together. Like, time just flies. But I'm just wondering in the last sort of 5 or 10 minutes if we can pivot a little bit towards the emerging futures and actually just think about where we are at right now and why these emerging futures are important. Futures, plural, as you said, Sahana. Because if we look where we are right now, and I'm talking massive privilege, chemicals industry, extractive, modern capitalism, modernity, all of the stuff that we know is dying away. There's a lot of people that are in like, whoa, I know something's happening. I'm not used to feeling in my body. This is weird. I'm really scared. Like, what is that? I've been up here for 45 years of my life. Like, what is that thing down there happening? Like, genuinely, because I'm seeing it all around the industry that I'm part of. But people are not allowing themselves the permission to feel. Ellie, is how I see it, and Sahana. Like it's so alien, and I'm just wondering what the invitation is. You know, I just don't know. There's just something about this liminal space we're in between the beautiful thing that, you know, what you're offering, what you're pointing to, the healing that can come from belonging to self. Yet it feels such a jump across that canyon from where maybe people are. Is it that far a jump, or is it not? Is what I'm curious about.
The phrase that came into my head, and this is something that lots and lots of other people have said. What I want people to hear it as is on an individual level, is break down to break through. And like, there's not another way to change, you know, that unless it's like that, you've got to just tear it down, or it will get torn down for you. And that's quite difficult to deal with as a concept, because we assume that destruction is negative. We assume that death is negative. Whereas, you know, I'm thinking about sort of esoteric practices. So there's a card in the tarot called the Tower, and it's historically been seen as a very negative card because it's the crumbling of a tower, you know, some massive change in your life. But what it's read as actually in depth is the crumbling of received wisdom. And it's this huge tower that's falling down and people are falling off, but it's a tiny lightning bolt has hit it, and that's what's made it crumble. And the idea is that it, you know, if it was so easy to break down, then you need to rebuild sort of stronger. So for me, there's allowing the breakdown, which I know sounds bonkers, but it's like, you've got to get to the individually, you've got to get to the, I just can't do this anymore. And, you know, one of the roots to that is sadness, and kind of that kind of real gut wrenching, the snotty cry, the wailing. And another route is the boredom. You know, I've seen lots of clients just literally get bored of their own nonsense. And that's been the thing that's changed them, you know, that got them to change. But that breakdown to break through, it's funny about the emerging futures, because I kind of think for me, there's the kind of, how are we meant to determine what an emerging futures are when we haven't even cleansed ourselves of or learned from where we've been? Like, how are we, you know, how am I meant to imagine a circle if I've seen my life full of squares? It's like, I've got to really rip that apart and totally break it down to its constituent components to then engage with that imaginative power. Does that, you know, I think the metaphor's a bit wibbly wobbly, but that kind of feeling of we've got to recognize that we're still learning, that there isn't an answer. The answer is in the doing. The answer is in the being of the experience of creating the emergent futures. Right?
Yep.
Maybe.
And you know what you said, the answer is in the doing, because there is no emergent future goalpost waiting for you to reach there. It's not a defined destination. It is our collective. That's why, you know, we keep using Gary and I the word co-creating. It's a collectively conscious co-creating as we belong to ourselves, that we do our actions from that place of belonging, whatever it is we do. We sweep the streets, we gather garbage, we pick up dry leaves, or we cook and clean and work in organizations, coach, whatever it is. But as we collectively do our actions from, like you said, you know, place of utter, I can't follow the old story anymore. It doesn't work for me, or I'm so fucking bored of all that I've been doing. It has become so meaningless that even the word meaningless fails to describe it.
Yeah.
So I have to live my life differently. So when we work from that place, each one of us, we will collectively create something that is so much bigger than us.
Yes.
It's the law of complexity, the murmuring of words. They're collectively creating something that they never intended to. They don't even know about. It happens at a much mightier level than each individual little sterling.
We can't see it,
We can't see it.
and it's
We can't.
that's that
That's
trust, you know, and that
that's the
like it's
trust.
happening.
Yes, yes. And I think when when Gary said that chasm and that leap of faith, and you spoke about breaking down to break through, all of that is based on the trust that if I do my bit with that energy of joy and that then anything else happening anywhere else can take care of itself.
Yeah.
I meant my corner of the carpet, and that's my little bit of role. Even if the corner of the carpet seems too minute to really impact the larger piece, the complexity theory says it does. We just can't see
Yes.
it, and we don't want to see it. It's okay. It will take care of itself. We just need to keep doing what we are doing.
And that so Shahana saying that, you know, there's no goal to get to in that emergent futures. I actually think that's really is so crucial to remember that, because the idea of a linear narrative with a goal-based narrative is the issue that we've been experiencing, that teleological thing of this is destiny, or we're constantly improving, or, you know, some bollocks like that. And we want it to be that because that is an easier answer.
Yeah.
Like we want to say I'm the VP of this, or I'm an accountant. We want to just say the job title because it's an easier answer than the reality, which is either I don't know, I'm finding out, or like we'll see. But I trust that it's happening. So even in the way that we articulate the journey that we're experiencing, or the how we're thinking about what's happening, not even where we're going, even in that, the conceptualization of it, I think we've got to keep breaking it down.
Yeah.
Because even if we're saying, oh yeah, we're going towards an emergent future, it's right over there, it's like this is the issue.
Destination. Yeah.
There's not a destination, you know.
There's no point dot on the map saying emergent future here. No.
we made it. We made it. So yeah, that really, I think there's such an important part of that. Like every time you make that an assumption, either about yourself or some, you know, it's that, is this just an old operating system, as you said, Shana? Is this an old way of thinking and talking? And you can just be curious about what would it be like to break that down. What happens if, you know, when I got diagnosed with ADHD and they talked about time blindness, one of the things I really loved about it was it gave me the permission to recognize that I've never thought that time is linear.
Yeah, it is not
linear. Yeah, you know, but it's almost like you have to allow yourself the breakdown of what you already know to break through to actually an authentic experience of how you are going through the world, what you belong to. I'm totally fine with working 9 to 5. I get it. You know, not everyone thinks time is non-linear. That's cool. But for me, this is a very simplistic example, but just having that, knowing that that's what I perceive and sense, there's a real kind of,
That's so important, because we lack the language to describe something that is non-linear. We talk, you go to an organization, they'll say, oh, okay, we'll embark on this journey. How long do you think it will take? I don't know. How long? What are the project timelines? So the language itself is structured around linearity, around predictability, around knowing and certainty in an extremely ambiguous, uncertain world. So while we talk of VUCA, but VUCA is just an acronym, no one really seems to internalize it and really sense into it, that in an uncertain, complex world, yes, you can have a plan, create a plan by all means, take a few steps as per your plan, then expect that plan to go awry. It's okay. Then you might fall off the grid of the plan altogether. Your Excel sheet might just stop working and you can't see it. Then what will you do?
It's having that.
Yeah, we've lost Gary.
There he is.
Coughing fit.
There he is.
Oh.
That's Dick.
I was thinking, it's just because I work in education as well. There's a lot of that. Everything's very linear, and this we're getting here, and this is the objective, and and that's antithetical to who I am. But I get it as well. I can work in that way. But I'm really interested in this idea, and I've written about it in the book, of the next right step. So you can think of all the steps you could take, do a big map of all the potential steps, and then you go, that one feels right, I'll do that. That one feels right, I'll do that next. Because again, I really believe people know the answers for themselves. It's just that they've been taught to not trust themselves, taught to not trust their intuition, their body knowing. But actually, everyone I've ever worked with, when you go, right, well, what do you think would be a good idea to do next? They know.
Yeah.
It's just that we've got to allow that to, again, the trust that I know this is the right next step. Even if it looks that way,
yeah,
it is going that way. It is on the way to whatever it is. It just looks, don't assume because it looks a bit left field that it isn't exactly where I need to be. And that I find that really exciting when you can really just surrender to, I love that. That seems like a good idea. I'm going to do that, because that's the gold stuff. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. That's the way. But you got to, again, break down the assumption that you have to be in control.
Yeah.
And think everything and know everything and know where we're going and It's like, no.
Yep.
Just let it be what it's becoming,
Trust and surrender are two such important things. We can't surrender without trust. And when you do, then, and let go of control over self and do what, like you said, embodied feels right in a very embodied way. It just feels right. You can't say why. I feel it. It's like getting butterflies in your tummy. It just feels right. But you can't explain it, but you still do it because you've learned to trust yourself and step into that feeling of rightness. That's when I think things start with this what you said, this magic starts happening. And when collectively people start doing that, whoa, that's when the unseen magic happens. We don't know the destination. It doesn't matter.
OMG. That's round one done. How many more of these are we doing? It's like the thing is, though, joking apart, there's so many angles we could go off again with there being possible futures, right? It's just the things that are popping up for me. But we do need to go to a checkout now, just purely because of timing. 53 minutes, Ellie. And
what can I say? Time is not linear, and wow, I can talk.
A time's non-linear. This is just showing you the linear time.
Yeah.
It's just this. I can sense, just what you said, Sahana, right? Sometimes something feels intuitively right, so you do it. Our structures, our organizational structures, our societal structures are designed to suppress that by design.
By design.
And something came up for me just last week. I've not shared this to anybody else yet. I literally made a little note in my Google Doc journal, and it was something along the line of, what was it I was saying? So gone, bang, come back. One of the other things I wrote in it was busyness. Busyness equals, I've lost it. I've gone mad. Live TV. I had two amazing things to share, Ellie. And they're
back to Gary in the studio.
I feel like Jonathan Pye. Honestly, it's absolutely brilliant. But no, the point I was actually trying to make to read this together is if we created the conditions, right? And maybe that's what these possible futures are, is creating the conditions that allow every single person to belong to themselves, how they need to in the moment, trusting that the innovation, insight, creativity, wisdom will come. This is the point I was trying to get to. My previous 2 points, everything is designed to suppress that. It's why art is not well regarded in school. It's why creativity is not a major for people to go and do, whereas business and MBAs are. Like every single part of the system, even today, designed to suppress creativity and connection.
Oh, yeah.
This embodiment, Ellie, is what I would say the modern system is all designed around. Modernity, it requires disembodiment, not embodiment.
Absolutely.
Yep.
It can't, the human brain is an incredible machine, but the human body is sort of very different, and they can be in tension. So if you want to make sure that you're maximizing the machine, the brain, then you've got to chop this bit off, because otherwise you'll know. People will know that things are wrong. People will know that something's not up. So if you cut this off, and particularly historically, femme presenting and female bodies, if you cut that off, because there's loads of energy and power in those, that's very, gonna be honest, messy in a great way.
Yeah.
If you cut that off, because and everyone's been at work or in a situation where they've gone, this is not acceptable, but they've not been able to connect these different centers. And I talked about it in an interview with my friend Maggie Cunningham the other day. She said, describe what embodiment is for people who've embodied practice. And I said, it's remembering that you have data centers in your heart and your stomach, and that you are just getting as much data as possible before you do something. But rather than just having this one data center, and then you're like, I'm making a decision, and then suddenly, 10 years later, you're like, was that a good idea? And it's because you haven't listened to the data it is there, your emotions and your instinct, your gut. That's data. So for me, embodied practice is those 3 data centers, just listening. But the best way to stop people from making decisions that align with who they truly are is to pretend that that data is not valid.
Yep.
And that is 100% my experience from, my lived experience as a young person. It's what I see in my students. It's what I see in my clients is, are you sure? Are you sure?
Yeah.
It's like every cell in your body is screaming that you know this. But are you sure? And it's like, yeah, if you're really in with that, you'll always know.
Yeah.
But absolutely that design of let's remove information from your decision-making process, because then you will make decisions that are good for us rather than good for you.
That's it.
Yes.
It's an Ellie Sahana, like Bob.
Yes.
So I'd love us to invite us to do a checkout. Is there something you've taken away that's maybe you've been reminded of during this conversation? Something afresh, something that you're taking away? I just want to say, I just love you anyway, Ellie. You know that, but just that data center, because I've been talking a lot about integration for me myself, like my messy journey of life. This year is all about integration, whatever that means. I'm still working it out. There's a lot of signs as to what's going on around that. But integration for me suddenly just had this beautiful image, which was literally like arteries plugging into each other, those 3 data centers, just like, so it's not data cables, arteries. It's like, get the blood flow, get the creativity going through. It's like, that's what integration is for me as Gary in 2022, is allowing those 3 data centers to flow freely without blockage and without fear. And I hadn't been fully clear what exactly was going on until you described those 3 different data centers. So that's what I'm taking away amongst a whole load of other things. Thanks so much. Sahana, how about you?
Awesome. I don't even want to say anything after that, Eddie. That was amazing. Just the very fact that we have a heart brain and gut brain, and it's there, and we don't use them, or rather we don't trust them, we don't access them, is pathetic. We would rather trust some manipulated data on an Excel sheet than our very strong, like you said, screaming in our cells, intuition. And then, of course, when the decision doesn't work, we can blame the Excel sheet, because that's how this world is designed. Have everything external to you, everything that can be blamable. But we don't trust ourselves enough to know it's all here. We can do it from here collectively. So thank you, Ellie, for reminding all of us of that our data centers are so much stronger, connected than any Excel sheet and any AI and anything out there that technology can create or are creating. Thank you.
Yeah, there's really something about the it's just easier to dissolve oneself of responsibility when it comes to one's own decisions. And there's a real power in recognizing how much, if you're listening to this, like you trust it and it is there. And something from the conversation, for me, what I love about these conversations is where the threads of what seem like very disparate experiences and disparate conversations actually can come together really beautifully. And sometimes I think, are we just all talking about the same thing? Do you know what I mean? Like we're all doing the same thing in different flavors. It's like it's all ice cream, but we're all just going, no, I've got pistachio, I've got this. It's like it's still delicious. Don't worry about it, babes. But I love that kind of the threading of those different things together. And these conversations are so important for me as a practitioner, because rather than even necessarily like exactly how I started with, articulating my work, it's not even necessarily about a phrase or a soundbite or anything. It is the energy which is presented, which is then this reciprocity of energy and excitement and emotion that gives you the fuel to keep going. It's that communal energy that is like, yeah, I'm going to just carry on, just keep those wheels going. And that's what I really value about it, is receiving that and opening to receive that, knowing that I'm then able to flow it back into this conversation and into other conversations. That really means something to me.
Wow. Oh, we had Annie pop along. Hello, Annie. It's all about the journey, not the destination. Yes, Annie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice little wrap up there. Thank you, Ellie. Thank you, Sahana. Thank you, anyone that watched us live or watched us back. And
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you, Gary, always for creating this space, this container, this energy field.
Can I just make one final point? Did you swear earlier, Sahana?
I heard it.
I love the energy flow. It's just like boom. I don't think I've heard that before, and I loved it.
I actually was trying to avoid swearing because I thought, I'm swear like a sailor, and I thought, better not. And then when Sahana was like, fucking bored, I'm like, yes, mate, yes, mate.
I've been trying to be polite for so many conversations. Okay, so I realized that's one part of me that is me, which I need to own up.
Yeah. And you know, it's that piece as well for me as well. It's like being okay to feel angry on occasion when your body. Like that's the one that I've suppressed a lot. Like when you really feel like you want to scream, guess what? I've started allowing myself to scream.
Yeah. It's really. Gary, you're gonna the exercise on Friday, the Friday morning one that you're gonna really like that, because it's all about releasing pent up emotion in a way that's safe, and then nurturing yourself afterwards. You're gonna love it.
On that note, nurture to you both. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Annie, for joining us. Anybody else that did? Much love. Keep being amazing.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.